Chicago, 1893. The world's Columbian Exposition has transformed the city into a beacon of progress and innovation. Millions of visitors flock to see the marvels of the modern age. But in the shadow of this celebration of human achievement lurked something far more sinister. A man whose crimes would earn him the title of America's first documented serial killer. His name was Herman Webster Mudgett, but the world would come to know him by his alias, Dr. H.H. Holmes. Today we're diving deep into the twisted mind and horrific crimes of the man who built what newspapers would later call a murder castle, right in the heart of Chicago. Herman Webster Mudgett was born on May 16, 1861, in Gilmanton, New Hampshire, to a farming family. From an early age, those around him noticed something was different. As a child, Holmes was reportedly fascinated with death and experimentation. Local stories tell of him performing crude surgeries on animals, though we should note that many details of his early life come from his own accounts, which were often unreliable. What we do know for certain is that he was intelligent and charismatic. He attended the University of Vermont before transferring to the University of Michigan Medical School, where he graduated in 1884. But even during his medical training, Holmes was already showing signs of the criminal mind that would later terrorize Chicago. He was caught stealing cadavers from the medical school laboratory, not for study, but for insurance fraud. He would take out life insurance policies on these bodies, disfigure them to make identification difficult, and then claim the insurance money by pretending they were victims of accidents. This early scheme would become a template for his later, far more deadly enterprises. In 1886, Holmes arrived in Chicago under his new identity as Dr. H.H. Holmes. The timing couldn't have been more perfect for someone with his particular talents for deception and murder. Chicago was booming. The city was preparing to host the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, and construction was everywhere. People were moving to the city in droves, many of them young women seeking employment opportunities. In this chaos of rapid growth and constant movement, people could disappear without much notice. Holmes took a job at a pharmacy in the Inglewood neighborhood, owned by Dr. Elizabeth Holton. Within a short time, Dr. Holton mysteriously disappeared, and Holmes claimed ownership of the pharmacy. This would become his pattern: gain someone's trust, eliminate them, and take over their assets. But Holmes had bigger plans than just running a pharmacy. Directly across the street, he began construction of what would appear to be a 3-story hotel designed to accommodate visitors to the upcoming World's Fair. In reality, he was building something far more sinister. What Holmes constructed was a maze of horror that defied logical explanation. The building, which would later be dubbed the Murder Castle by the press, was designed with one purpose in mind: to kill without detection. The first floor housed legitimate businesses, Holmes's pharmacy, various shops, and restaurants. This gave the building a veneer of normalcy. But the second and third floors told a different story entirely. Holmes designed the building himself and used different construction crews for different sections, ensuring that no single person understood the complete layout. The result was a labyrinth of over 100 rooms, many without windows, connected by a maze of hallways that led nowhere. Some rooms were fitted with gas jets that could flood the space with deadly gas. Others had walls lined with asbestos and equipped with blowtorches, essentially turning them into crematoriums. There were chutes that led directly to the basement, where Holmes had installed a large furnace and acid baths. Perhaps most chilling were the soundproof rooms where Holmes could torture his victims without anyone hearing their screams. Some doors could only be opened from the outside, trapping anyone who entered. The basement was perhaps the most horrific part of the structure. Here, Holmes had created what amounted to a body disposal factory. In addition to the furnace and acid baths, he had surgical tables where he would dissect his victims. He would then sell the skeletons to medical schools, turning his murders into profit. During construction, local workers reportedly found it strange that Holmes insisted on doing much of the work himself, especially the installation of the gas lines and the more unusual architectural features. But Chicago was a city of ambitious builders and eccentric millionaires, so his odd requests didn't raise too much suspicion. The 1893 World's Columbian Exposition opened on May 1st, and visitors poured into Chicago. Holmes' hotel was perfectly positioned to take advantage of the influx of tourists, particularly young women traveling alone. Holmes was charming and persuasive. He would approach women at the fair, strike up conversations, and offer them employment or lodging at his hotel at very reasonable rates. Many of these women were never seen again. One of his most documented victims was Julia Smythe, who worked at Holmes's pharmacy. Julia had become Holmes' mistress, but when she became inconvenient, she and her daughter Pearl simply vanished. Holmes claimed they had moved to California, but their bodies were later found in the hotel. Another victim was Emmeline Sigrand, a stenographer who Holmes hired to work in his building. She was young, attractive, and completely unaware of the danger she was in. Like so many others, she disappeared without a trace, her fate only discovered when authorities finally searched Holmes' horror house. Holmes didn't limit himself to random victims. He also targeted people who got too close to his operations. When Benjamin Pitezel, his business partner and accomplice, became a liability, Holmes murdered him as well, though this crime would ultimately lead to his downfall. What made Holmes particularly dangerous was his ability to maintain multiple identities and relationships simultaneously. He would court several women at once, sometimes even marrying them, only to kill them when they became inconvenient or when he had drained their bank accounts. The exact number of people Holmes killed during the World's Fair period may never be known. Bodies were destroyed so completely in his furnaces and acid baths that many victims simply vanished without a trace. Holmes' downfall began with his greed. In 1894, he convinced his associate Benjamin Pitezel to fake his own death for insurance money. But instead of following the plan, Holmes actually murdered Pitezel and tried to collect the insurance payment himself. This drew the attention of insurance investigators, who were far more thorough than local police. Detective Frank Geyer began tracing Holmes' bat movements and quickly realized that this was no ordinary insurance fraud case. The investigation led Geyer to Holmes's hotel, which had been largely abandoned after the fair ended. When authorities finally searched the building thoroughly, they were horrified by what they found. In the basement, they discovered bone fragments, jewelry, and personal belongings of missing persons. The furnace contained evidence of human remains. Acid vats held traces of dissolved bodies. The building's twisted architecture told its own story of premeditated murder. As the investigation expanded, more evidence emerged. Holmes had been traveling the country, leaving a trail of missing persons and suspicious deaths. The Pitezel children, who Holmes had promised to care for, were found murdered in different cities. Holmes was arrested in Boston on November 17, 1894, initially for the Pitezel insurance fraud. But as evidence mounted, it became clear that authorities had captured something unprecedented in American criminal history: a serial killer who had operated on an industrial scale. Holmes' trial began on October 28, 1895 in Philadelphia, where he was charged with the murder of Benjamin Pitezel. The case attracted national attention, with newspapers calling it the trial of the century. Throughout the trial, Holmes maintained his charm and intelligence, often acting as his own attorney. He was articulate, well-dressed, and seemed to enjoy the attention. But the evidence against him was overwhelming. During the proceedings, Holmes confessed to 27 murders, though he later recanted many of these confessions. Modern estimates suggest his actual victim count may have been much higher, possibly over 200 people. What struck observers during the trial was Holmes's complete lack of remorse. He spoke about his crimes with the detached manner of someone discussing the weather. Psychiatrists would later describe him as having what we would now recognize as psychopathic personality disorder. Holmes was found guilty and sentenced to death. Even facing execution, he remained manipulative, selling his story to newspapers and attempting to profit from his notoriety right up until the end. On May 7, 1896, Herman Webster Mudgett, alias H. Holmes, was hanged at Moyamensing Prison in Philadelphia. He was 34 years old. The case of H. Holmes changed how America thought about crime. He was the first known serial killer to operate on such a massive scale, and his methodical approach to murder shocked a nation that was largely innocent of such systematic evil. Holmes' murder castle was demolished in 1938, but its legacy lived on. The case established many of the investigative techniques still used today in hunting serial killers. Detective Frank Geyer's methodical approach to tracking Holmes across multiple states became a model for future investigations. The Holmes case also marked the beginning of America's fascination with serial killers. His story has inspired countless books, movies, and TV shows, cementing his place as one of the most notorious criminals in American history. Today, a post office stands where Holmes' murder castle once operated, but the story of H.H. Holmes serves as a chilling reminder that monsters can hide behind the most ordinary facades, and that even in moments of great human achievement, like the World's Fair of 1893, evil can find a way to flourish in the shadows. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating, make sure to like and subscribe for more historical true crime content. And let me know in the comments, what other historical criminals would you like to see covered? Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.